How to weed out tire kickers. Hey guys, this is Brad from probateresource.com. At probateresource.com, we are a real estate solutions company specializing in the world of probate and inheritance properties, and we built out probateresource.com and our YouTube channel at Probate Resource to be an all-encompassing resource to help you with all things related to probate, not just the real estate piece. Okay, I've been in this business long enough to see that there are a lot of people out there that are claiming to buy houses, especially in the probate and inheritance world. You may have gotten postcards from people advertising to purchase the home that you've inherited. And I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of people out there that are inexperienced and are tire kickers. And look, first of all, we all have to start somewhere. I started out that way many, many years ago. I started marketing to probate deals back in 2017. So I've been at it for a number of years now. And I've been in this business. I'm kind of the crotchety old man now in the business. And I want to talk about tire kickers. And the reason I want to talk about tire kickers is because there's a lot of people out there claiming to buy houses that are really just out there trying to jerk you around. They're trying to lock your property up under contract, and then they're trying to basically what's called wholesale the property. Wholesaling's not illegal. And if done properly, it's perfectly fine. But a lot of people don't understand how to do it properly. And a lot of the gurus out there in our industry are teaching people how to wholesale properties, and they're not necessarily teaching them the ethical and the right way to do it. What they're teaching them is to basically get this property under contract, tie it up, get as long of a due diligence period as possible to give you enough time to then try to sell that contract to another investor, a real cash buyer who actually really buys houses like us, basically just sell the contract to them and make a small profit in the middle. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys, don't know how to properly evaluate properties. They don't understand, how to run the numbers. And they're basically just going to tell you what you want to hear. If you tell them you want $150,000 for this house or $350 or whatever the number is, they're going to say, okay, cool. How about 140 or, 340 or whatever. And you'll say, okay, fine. And then they're going to get you under contract. And then they're going to go advertise that property out to their private network of investors, or maybe they don't even have a private network of investors. I've seen them post these things out on like Facebook Marketplace. They're not supposed to do that. Especially, that's called brokering. If you are advertising a property that you do not own or have any particular interest, depending on the state's rules are all different. But if you're advertising that property for sale, you are brokering, right? So a lot of them are brokering without a license. I happen to be a licensed real estate agent in the state of Georgia where I live. So I can kind of speak from both sides of this because I'm an agent and I'm an investor. And a lot of these guys are going about this all the wrong way. And then because they don't know how to run their numbers, they're advertising this property for sale. And the real cash buyers, the real investors like myself, who are looking at these deals and saying, the math doesn't math. Like, at the end of the day, as an investor, when we're purchasing a property to buy as an investment, whether we intend to flip the property, whether we intend to keep it as a rental, turn it into a short-term rental. I also buy properties and then I sell them on seller financing and I carry back the paper and get the interest and the payments over time. So there's different strategies to what they call dispositioning the property. Those of us who are experienced look at this and it's really strictly just a math problem. And if the math doesn't work out, I don't buy the deal. It has to pencil out. I have to have a return on my investment. Otherwise, it's a bad investment. I'd be losing money. No one gets in the investing business on purpose to purposely lose money. I guess some people do, but for tax reasons. But for the most part, most people who are investing in something are expecting some sort of return on their investment. They want their money back plus a little bit extra, right? That's all I'm looking at. And when I look at these deals from these inexperienced guys, I'm doing the math and I'm like, no, the numbers don't work. What they think the property is worth is not what it's actually worth. They're usually overinflating what it's worth. And then also what it would cost to fix this property up and get it to either sellable condition or rentable condition or whatever. they're like way, way low on their numbers because they don't actually know what any of this stuff costs. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, yeah, that's not a good deal. I wouldn't buy that. So then what happens to you as a seller? Well, this other person is basically stringing you along, right? And they're trying to sell this contract and they're trying to find. It does get to the point where, in my opinion, if you are wholesaling a property and it's a good deal, you should be able to find a buyer for that property in no time, right? You should be able to find anybody to buy it within a day or two, right? But if they're stringing you out and they haven't found a buyer for that property within the first week, in my opinion, they've overshot, right? They're not going to find a buyer because now all they're doing is they're hanging around and they're looking for a poor sucker, maybe an inexperienced person to overpay for that property. But guess what? A few years ago, when the market shifted and interest rates shot up and the market changed, all the suckers in our business left. They closed up shop, they left. They're not buying any properties anymore. So the only people that's left after that market shift that we experienced are the experienced guys. So they don't have that pool of that sucker to sell the property to for that higher price. What happens to you as a seller? Well, they're going to string you along and they're going to keep trying and they're going to keep trying and they're going to keep trying. And depending on how long that due diligence period lasts for, they may wait until the 11th hour of that due diligence and then they're either going to terminate the contract or they're going to get a low offer from a real investor, a real cash buyer, and that real cash buyer is going to say, well, I need to buy the property for X. And then they're going to come back to you, the seller, and they're going to say, Mr. Seller, I need to get the property for this price. And they're basically going to, take the offer they got from the other person and they're going to add $10,000 to it. And then they're going to say, or they're going to subtract 10,000 from it because they want to make their 10,000, or maybe it's 5,000 or 15 or 100,000, whatever the number is. And they're going to, put their margin in the middle and say, okay, well, I have this guy that's going to buy it. What I have seen, especially in these cases where they're waiting until the very end and they're finding that one guy who makes that offer, and then all of a sudden they go back to that one guy and they tell you, the seller, they renegotiate you down and say, okay, well, I can only give you, 120 for the property instead of 150 because the other investor said they could offer 130 for it. So they're getting it from you for 120. They're selling it to him for 130. They're making a quick 10,000 and then that other person's closing. But guess what happens a lot of times is that other sucker that overpaid because they couldn't actually find any real legitimate investor cash buyers that actually want to buy that deal, then that person is going to flake out on the deal because they're all of a sudden going to realize, oh, my offer got accepted. And then they're going to start really crunching their numbers. And then they're going to be like, well, actually, I was wrong on my numbers. And then they're going to come back to the person you're dealing with and say, hey, I can't make this deal happen. And then what happens? Well, you're stuck holding the bag as the seller. You're the one left, really no legitimate contract. The guy you were dealing with doesn't even have the means or the ability to actually close on the transaction and buy the deal. So then they terminate the contract altogether. Hopefully they gave you some earnest money and you can get that earnest money back because they terminated. Or maybe you're still within the due diligence period because they gave you some 30-day due diligence period, which is ridiculous in my opinion. You should not have a due diligence period that long. If you are selling land, like a piece of property that needs to be developed, there are typically long due diligence periods in land sales. I do development work, and typically we're going to do a 60 to 90 day due diligence period on a land sale because I have to get surveyors in there. I have to get soil engineers in there to do soil tests or do boundary surveys, or I have to call the county, the zoning board. All of that stuff takes a long time. Right now in 2024, when I'm making this video, just to get a surveyor out can take weeks to get a surveyor out. So that's why we do that. But in a cash sale on an existing single family home that's not going to require any of that stuff, there's no reason why an investor should give you a due diligence period longer than 7 to 10 days. If they're giving you or asking for a due diligence period longer than that, then more than likely they're trying to wholesale the property to somebody else and they're trying to give themselves enough runway to try to find a buyer in that period of time. And if they can't find a buyer, they can cancel their contract with you and they don't lose their earnest money deposit. So what do you do as a seller? Well, you need to pay attention to the earnest money deposit and you need to pay attention to the length of the due diligence period. We just went to a property yesterday that was a probate and inheritance deal, and the seller was doing what I call and jokingly call the investor dog and pony show, where they get postcards from 15 investors, and maybe you're one of those people, you got a bunch of postcards in the mail, and they call all these people and they bring them all out to the property at the same time and have them all bid against each other, right? When we get to those situations, we usually just leave and say, look, man, I'm here to offer you a real offer. I'll do what I say I'm going to do. Like, I'm experienced. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to get into a bidding war with the rest of these guys. I don't play that game, right? If you want to get into a bidding war, you go down to the courthouse steps. And there's a reason why I don't buy properties on the courthouse steps, because it gets into a bidding war, and the poorest sucker is the one who wins and ends up overpaying for a deal and ends up losing money. That's how it is nowadays. So that's why I don't do that. But we went to this dog and pony show. But what I liked that the seller did, and a lot of investors will be like, hey, I don't like that. That seller said, I am only going to accept offers with zero due diligence in the contract. So I guess he's been through this rodeo before. Maybe he has, maybe he got burned before, or maybe he did a little bit of research. Maybe he knows something about real estate. But basically, we submitted an offer to him last night with zero due diligence. Now, from our standpoint, if I'm going to make an offer to a seller with no due diligence, basically that means that if I put it under contract and I cancel, I lose all my earnest money deposit, or I have to close on the transaction, right? I'm stuck in that deal. I don't have a way out of that deal. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my numbers are very conservative to give myself some wiggle room in case something unforeseen happens, because something unforeseen always happens. I've done hundreds and hundreds of real estate deals. In fact, I just sold a house yesterday that 2 weeks ago our buyers were doing their walkthrough and whatever, and we had a leak in the shower in the master bathroom, and it created some water damage, and I had to send a whole team in there, and the buyers of the house ended up getting a brand new shower because we had to tear it all out and redo everything and fix the water damage and get the mitigation company to dry the house out for 3 days and do all the things. It cost me another $5,000 to get all that stuff fixed. And my insurance deductible is $5,000. So I just paid out of pocket. So I lost, I didn't lose, but I didn't make $5,000 as much as I was going to make. It's the cost of doing business. It happens. I've been doing this a long time. Things happen, right? That's actually not the first time I've had a property flood before. It happens. So anyways, I'm making a very conservative offer to the seller and saying, okay, well, I'm stand by my number. This is what I'll buy your property for. I'm firm on this number. The numbers make sense for me, and I'm good with it. And from the seller's standpoint, because he understands what the due diligence period is for, he was using that to his advantage. And he said, well, I know that if I go under contract with the highest offer and they have no due diligence, can they still terminate the contract? Sure, but I get to keep their earnest money deposit if they do. And I know I've got a guaranteed buyer. I know basically he's weeding out the tire kickers with that offer right there. I hope this makes sense to you. I know this video is long. A lot of my videos go long, but I think it's important to cover these topics because it is important to understand who you're working with and what you're getting into when you are selling a property. So if you have an inherited property that you're interested in selling, we'd love to make you an offer on that property. At Probate Resource, we buy properties all over the U.S. We buy them, and we have investor partners that we directly partner with in the specific markets. Also, if you're thinking about just listing the property with a real estate agent, we have built a fantastic network of real estate agents all over the U.S. that are probate inheritance specialists. We'd be happy to refer you to one of those agents if you want to list it out on the market the traditional way. If you just want a cash offer, fill out the form there on the website. A member of our team will be in touch with you ASAP, and we'd love to make you an offer on your property. So thanks again for checking out this video. I'm Brad with probateresource.com. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.